I don't know what the PARS dot signifies. I don't know what they are covering up there, but I believe it's an island. And they drew this funky cherub with a bull, whatever, or what lady wrangling a bull on there, probably as a literal cover-up of the island. It's strange. Yeah, Iceland is kind of off location there. But I thought this was interesting. Okay, so that you see Barbaria and Africa, and I figured something out about Barbaria. Look at that. Now, if it said Tartaria, wouldn't it make sense they could, if you changed the word Tartaria into something, Barbaria absolutely fits 100%. And it says, did you see this? It says that why did they make the newer map there as well as with the city? The differences in the version, now this is talking about the European map, are particularly noticeable by the re-engraved place names, such as the word Afrique, which is engraved in italics in the second version. And then they speculate to try to get you off the scent, right? But all of my senses are firing because clearly they changed, I think, this area, and specifically Northern Africa must have been part of Tartaria, and they simply couldn't have it be that way when they got around to driving them out. However they did that, I'm not sure yet. Have ideas, but they want to change the maps, but at this time changing the maps is a little bit more involved, but it's an ingenious little thing to make up this idea of barbarians. And of course the description of a barbarian is exactly the opposite of what a Tartarian would have been. Barbarians are violent thugs. They are brutes. They're unlearned, unskilled, and they just want to fight you and attack you. Well, I don't know about them wanting to fight and attack the people in Europe, but it seems like it was the other way around, and they had been driven back into these areas that were Tartaria, part of that empire, but then the maps changed to Barbaria. The barbarians, right? And at one point, Germany, they were the barbarians. And who said that but the Romans? And I contend that the Tartarian Empire is the Eastern Roman Empire. So it fits in this case, especially when you look at the map as a whole. Going back. Back to where it's like the Iron Curtain here. There. Eastern Roman Empire makes perfect sense. The Western Roman Empire fell. The Eastern Roman Empire was driven back, and they stretched in what we think of as the times of AD, or maybe even before. They had expanded all the way into the Americas from the west, I believe. From the west, maybe they were planted from the east, but they had connected up. That's why the Panama Canal was already constructed. That's why San Francisco was already considered the port city to Asia. And they were actively trading on those routes and on those waters. Now, probably not that much. We don't know. We don't see a lot of Oriental stuff in the early Americas, but there's so much we don't know and so much we have not yet found. So just moving on here, and let's get back to where we were. There's a lot of good stuff here, but I'm going to roll through it a little faster because that was the main find right there. The barbarians, right? And so I'm going to roll it along here. So the maps, even the maps that have been doctored, abridged, and even those we can learn things from. So this is just a picture you've seen before, but I just had a better version of it from a subscriber, and then here from a subscriber as well. The tech on top of this building, very cool. And then something I had studied to present was presented by somebody else. And so this pyramid, I just don't know the origin of the upper picture showing it kind of buried like that. I suspect this gigantic useless hotel in Pyongyang, the Ryugyong Hotel, has been there for quite a while, and it kind of looks like those metropolis type buildings. So it kind of fits that. Here in Cambodia, you have the red brick. That's something that I've been surprised. Like these structures even may have been built out of the red brick, and then they just have like the plaster. So a lot of times I'll say it's stone, but it's probably not originally in a lot of cases. Now this drawing from 17th century, supposedly that the horse looks small or maybe the man is big. More on that in a bit. Here they screwed up Jean-Etienne Lyotard. I don't know if he's the inventor of the leotard, which was really great for us guys in the 80s and 90s, We enjoyed that invention. Actually, he has nothing to do with the leotard, but look at his age. He was born in 702 and died in 1789. It could be a typo, but is it one of these Freudian or rather Balinese slips where you actually do something subconsciously that you know to be true when you're not intending to do or say, in this case, type or not type. The curious case of the mysterious one. So, but yeah, he's one of these painters. Now, I looked at a lot of this art, and not all of them are paintings, and most of them are not, actually. This is wall art, and not Walmart, wall art, and I just saw like a dome kind of theme, and then censorship at the top, and the sizes of the people were indicative of giants. Here you can see something at the top. It wasn't torn away, but it's really fabulous. These were for sale. They are for sale. That's where I found all this stuff, is in where they're selling stuff. Now, this is Alexander the Great. That's King Darius down there. But look at the sizes of the people. Now, did they have puny horses? Was it My Little Pony? Or do you think Alexander the Great was a big dude? Well, in an earlier video, I showed you that he's believed to have been almost like 8 feet tall. Well, there you can kind of see it in that other picture. But the sizes of all these people, compared to the horses, some of them are just huge. I mean, horses are like, they can barely ride horses. The guys are so big. And I don't believe for a minute that their horses were small. Their horses were probably actually bigger than, most of the horses today. And And what did that say there? That's a little suspect. If you look at the bottom, it looks a little pasted on to me. So I kind of disregard what it says. So you almost don't know. I like to just look at the pictures and kind of ignore a lot of times what it says at first. So you almost don't know. I like to just look at the pictures and kind of ignore a lot of times what it says at first, and then I read it later after I've formed my opinions based on the evidence. Don't tell me what to think. Let me look at it, and then I think. Like here, there's this fabric draped over, like from what? Is it an airship that was scuttled into the trees? Or is it just a tent cloth they hung up to get them out of the rain, even though it's not raining? Or, what? We don't know. It could be cover, just from them seeing the higher ranked officials, so they can't take pot shots at them with a spy with a bow and arrow or something like that. I don't know. But again, you look at these, the elephants are sometimes way larger than compared to the horses, but we do know from the mud flood, like mud fossil university style archaeology, that there were extremely large elephants in the early times. All kinds of things like that to notice. Lack of trees overall, the muddy, undulating landscape. And in a lot of these things, just the general lack of erosion and the advancement of the art and the music, particularly in the 16th century. A lot of it all gets attributed to this so-called Renaissance, as if people didn't know about perspective and proportion before then in their art. Now, these panels are just fabulous. They look similar to some in an earlier video, the last video I made about giants, and I show portraits from the 16th century, and there's a lady standing next to those panels, and they only go up just barely to her waist, if that high, Here's a guy, this is the guitar hero, the Eddie Van Halen of the day. He's got a feather in his cap because he can rock that instrument with what? I didn't count the strings. It looks like, double set strings, maybe 8 or 9 different tunings, each one at an octave maybe. And but that's basically a picture. There's your camera obscura at work, If you stand back from these and look at first glance, it looks like a really, really high def, well done photograph. But then the coloring and everything looks like, like we do with Instagram today, and you do filters and you kind of make the colors pop a little bit more and dress it up. That's what they did, just with whatever method they used. I'm not convinced that the method is as easily done today, although they do make fakes. Now, this interested me, the manner of the sun in the sky, how it's a yellow glow. Did it really look like that back then? I kind of remember that from childhood. I have not seen it in ages like that. The sun seems harsh, white, and small to me now. But that's just a subjective observation, anecdotal, and of little value, though I know many of you probably agree. The purpose of this picture, I want to point out the sizes of the people. And obviously, if you look at the grid layout of the tiled floor, the vanishing point, the horizon, just look at the structure, gazebo, or whatever kind of overhang structure on the right, how that's done. And I ask this question, does the artist, if it's even an artist and not some kind of a method of photography, does the artist understand perspective and proportion? Okay, yeah, I think so too. Now you look at these people, are they supposed to be children? Are they supposed to be little people? No, I don't think so. I think they are kind of more like us, and these other people are just giants. Not super big giants, but just big people, Very large indeed. These are the Tatarians, and I think maybe they got a little bit complacent because of their size, and they didn't worry about these little bastards coming after them someday, I don't know. I can only speculate. Of course, we haven't been taught what's correct. But all over in these early paintings. Now, these wires are interesting, but also just the sizes of the people in the backgrounds as well. It seems a little mismatched, but then that's based on our experience today. We have to forget about it. That's a different time. Now, this is interesting. This is the church in Antwerp, and this kind of got me started. I was just looking at these 16th century. Now, obviously in the front, you could say, oh, they didn't know how to draw children, but they did. They drew children all the time. They drew the cherubs. So they knew how to do the proportions of a child's face. That's not a child. That little guy standing there is a grown man. And there are you can see that the littler people, were just right alongside the bigger people. And the bigger people outnumbered the littler people. And the little people seem to be not as wealthy. Now look at the door on the far left, you can barely see it, and the door on the far right, you can barely see it. And you compare to more contemporary drawings and photographs, and it's very difficult to find a good comparison. I spent quite some time on it, and I still need to. I kind of decided just to go ahead and make this video. This you can just see how small the people are there next to the very same columns. Now, keep in mind, the floor has been raised several feet as well. When you compare the proportions of the columns, and see this painting, that painting has been lowered. Because in the earlier traning, see, that's that same painting. Now, these are little people like us, right? But I just wanted to show you that they lowered that. But yeah, you compare these people standing around to like today, the floor lowered, so the seams on the columns are going up. I would say if the floor were at the same height, people today, their shoulders maybe would be approaching those seams. And in this picture, you can see this guy, the little guy on the left, matches up. And then the big people clearly tower over those seams. You could say, well, they're kind of in the foreground. Well, a little bit, but if you look at the tiling on the floor and you consider that those are squares, that they're not that much in the foreground. And then the lady, not a man, lady is really equal with them, and that line is like below the waistline, or at the waist, like at the hip line, really. So there's some evidence right there. And again, the proportions, they've raised the floor. Did they raise it just for this reason? I don't know. They do go to great lengths to cover things up. So before this runs long and I lose some of my work for lack of storage space, Antwerp, do they call it that because the little people were considered ants and twerps? No, I don't think that's why. But a little bit of star fortage going on, of course, as per usual. Here, you can see about the only construction drawings you can find from the Renaissance of such buildings that are attributed to the Renaissance are refurbishments, putting a new roof on, etc. Not etc. It's etc. But yeah, why not put a Hershey's Kiss on the top? If you don't know what that is, it's like a chocolate drop thing. But anyway, that's an onion dome for the lighthouse that was already there, in my humble opinion. And then look at this. The structures, the people in relation to the structures. Again, the heights compare. So they weren't just built to be grandiose. They were built to fit the people who occupied them at the time. Like I have thought, and I knew that I knew it would be a good thing to do, to go back through these older drawings and paintings and see the proportions and then compare them to modern day if the structure still stands. That's sometimes the hard part, is finding a structure that still stands. And another hard part is getting through all this bull crap, because you see these guys, Gerardius Mercator and Abraham Ortelius, good, yeah, they made maps, but they've got the globe, they've got the compass. They're telling you that they are full of shite. But they also tell you that they tell you some truth, and they say theatrum orbis terrarium. It's a big terrarium. It's a big theater that we live in. Flat plane with a glass dome. Theater of the world. And this is the presentation, the slideshow, done by somebody who's not awake, or if he's awake, then he's deceiving, because what he presents is something either tongue-in-cheek to deceive the sleeping masses, or it's just basically your official narrative with a little bit of a twist. But it's right there in your face, Theater of the World. Now that's the name of the atlas that was done, so I'm not blaming him, and I'm not saying he's intentionally doing anything. At that time, I would have been right with them, and who knows, because it was 2011, I think, or 2015 actually, so I correct myself, 2015, but still, that's 4 years ago. And again, I don't expect them to think anything other than I'm crazy, because they just don't do the research like I do. They don't ask the questions I ask, and they don't consider the valuable opinions of folks such as yourself. And the great comment sections I have in these videos are of great value, and I hope they don't get lost ever. But yeah, the art tells you the tale. It's imagination. Right there in white over gray. Utopia. And there's your Fool's Cap. Fool's Cap map. It's attributed to Ortelius, and it's the curvature of the earth that is the face. You see? Are you getting it? It's right there, and it's like a mirror, and it's in your face. Okay? Does it also say something about the moon? I don't know. I don't know what he's holding. But I do know that they knew and that they were intentionally deceiving everybody. Everybody. The Tatarians knew the earth was flat. The Tatarians knew that the earth has a dome over it because it's in their structures in every town. And it makes sense. And I think these dome structures were more than just architectural in nature. I think they were tools of teaching, just like a classroom globe. Well, what better than a dome with a flat floor to understand the real world that we live in? Just like when you go to the planetarium, I believe most planetariums have a flat floor, relatively level to the ground level of the flat earth, and then they have a dome that you look up where they project lights on and present the stars as they actually appear in reality. It's funny. Tataria didn't have any globes in it, really. Not that I have seen yet. They've kind of put some in, but they were not original. They were faked. Like one, I think, just one I found, okay? That's newer stuff. See how they feature it? And then look at the architecture. They're interested in architecture, and look at that crap on the left. In my opinion, maybe you like it. I don't fault you if you do, but compared to the old world architecture, just give me a break. So don't believe what they tell you about the maps. Look at the damage there on that map. That's crazy. And here's a library. It's the Hendrik Kahn Science Library. It's Kahn Science. And that may be unintentional, but there's a globe on the bottom right. What the heck's that have to do with anything? And then I've been chided by a few viewers, probably are not listening, but I've been chided. They wrote me off saying, UAP, you said this library was originally made for giants, and that all bookcases and the ladders and the second level, but that's not why. Because how could giants read books that are so small? Well, okay, I'll tell you. Look at the shelves more closely, all right? Don't write me off. And look at the depth of the shelves. Now take that depth and think of a proportion of books to fit that depth about the way that books fit in normal library shelves. And take out every other row, and then you have giant books. Et voila. That's it. I'm dropping the microphone. Well, I won't drop the microphone. Too expensive. All right, so that's it. Ta-ta for now.